Hi, my name's Ian Battersby. I'm Head of Internal Medicine at Davies Veterinary Specialists, and welcome to another edition of our Out of Hours podcasts. We've done a variety of different topics over the last few weeks, varying from cardiology, surgery, and the infectious disease series. But today we're going to do a podcast on a slightly different non-clinical topic. Well, there are clinical interactions with it, and that's on environmental sustainability. Now, you may have seen that Davies were recently awarded awards from an external body on our work in making the practice more sustainable and undertaking green initiatives, and that's a reflection of our green group. And the lead, some of the driving force of that work, fantastic work, was from Ellie, who's joining us today. Ellie West is one of our anaesthetists, but has been recently appointed as the Linnaeus environmental sustainability lead for the group, which is fantastic. So welcome, Ellie.
Hi there, Ian. I'm a bit gutted that I don't get the tall pitchers of glass. I've only got the mug of tea, but
Yeah. So well, how's lockdown going, first of all?
Yeah, it's really great. We've been learning about Florence Nightingale and the Coxcomb statistics diagrams this morning, so it's a nice break to come back to sustainability.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the challenge of trying to explain to my 7-year-old why she needs to learn how to spell economics is this is a lot easier. What's economics? So anyway, right. So environmental sustainability. I thought what we'd do for those who are listening is talk about our experience. Really, talk about, well, maybe we'll do a bit of background about what is this topic and how it all relates. Really talk about some of the experiences that you've had and what you found worked and things like that. But also, without doubt, I mean, you have so much passion for this topic. It's infectious and it's brilliant. And we obviously want to try and spread the message and help people on the journey that we've already done using our experience. So there's resources that we'll talk about and things like that we can provide and help people on their journey. So maybe if we just talk about, what is environmental sustainability? What's your definition?
So I guess it's important to recognise there is a difference between the kind of environmentalism which I started in my personal life and home life with, and that's really how Green Group. When we started Green Group, it was a bunch of environmentalists, and then we've moved along to this definition of sort of a corporate sustainability thing, which I'm embracing now, and obviously I'm the environmental sustainability lead. So sustainability has been defined by the UN in 1987 or so, and they defined it as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So this is this idea that the way that we're living today is going to be is going to allow the future generations to live in the way that they want to live as well, and so that we're not compromising either. So it's about now and it's about future, and it's about preserving things for all of us, and within that it includes an element of they call it people, planet, profit. Things that are going to work for the planet, things that are going to work for the people in it, things that are going to work for systems to be not just profitable but sort of financially resilient, because ultimately if they aren't, then the people and the planet will suffer as well. So when you get these elements all together, and some of them are social sustainability elements which aren't so much of what I do, but when you get these elements together, then they all become additive, and not just additive, they all kind of expand each other, and it becomes a kind of a glorious thing. So that's why for me it's moved from just being environmental, just saying I want to do this because it's right for the planet. I want to do it because it's right for all of us, for my kids, their future, for the world that I see around me, for the flowers that are in the street. So it's moving away from just saying it's about environmentalism and doing a bit of a corporate social responsibility. Yes, we should be doing that. So we're going to do something. Yeah, it's not just box ticking. It's really about enriching everything for everybody, and for everything. So it's a bigger thing.
Because listening to you talk, then, I mean, I suppose when you were talking about how planning and things like that, as a society now, we're really beginning to learn about decisions that society made in the past and the consequences now. And you think about, everybody talks about global warming's a classic. The plastics, decisions we made to, we'll just use these very quickly, and we haven't thought about the long-term impact. And I suppose one area that one of my areas is antibiotic resistance. And again, we use these drugs probably not in a way considering what the impact would be in 20, 30 years time. So learning
Yeah.
from mistakes and planning to avoid mistakes, certainly.
I think that's it. It's having the sense that we are a part of history. We are a living part of it. We are making decisions. Even
Yeah,
if you think that you're just being dragged along with the tide, actually you can choose the way that you live. You can choose the way that you do things, and you can choose to do things in a better way.
yeah.
And it always reminds. When I studied for my exams, I finally history of anesthesia was on the syllabus, and I finally looked at the history of anesthesia, because before then it was just like, I am not learning this. Um, and in the history of anesthesia, if you look at an anesthetic machine, all of the knobs are on the left-hand side.
Yeah,
And if you're a right-handed person, it's illogical to reach across the machine. In fact, it's a safety issue, because you're doing something
yeah,
unnatural to reach that way to get to the knobs, because then you're not directly affecting the knob. You might knock one, if you see what I mean. And of
yeah,
course, it's because the first guy that developed anesthetic machines was left-handed.
yeah,
And you think these kind of little things, little tweaks in the way that you make decisions will affect things for years and years to come. So we
yeah,
can choose better. And certainly coming out of COVID, we have to choose better, because some of the elements of the situation that we're in now are related to the way that we've treated our planet and our world. And
yeah.
so we can make better choices. So here is the option for us coming out of this: is can we do it better? And I think the answer is yes. So this is the exciting opportunity.
Well, because it's I mean, it's COVID is horrific,
Oh,
and the impacts are going to be not just a short term on on human deaths, but also the long term impacts of the economy, poverty, and things like that.
yes.
But you're right, in every situation like this, there is opportunities, and people are already beginning to realise, actually, I don't need that big office in the centre of London, and everybody to come in every day. So there are opportunities in this area that we're going to learn from all this social distancing. So
Yeah, I mean, telemedicine for one thing, that
yeah,
is a classic people, planet, profit, but the impacts of all these things will yet to be determined. Will it be better for every social group to be working from home?
yeah,
We all know the challenges of doing so now.
yeah, yeah.
so,
Absolutely.
so I think that's why I've gone with sustainability, and sort of felt that is that was I didn't know about sustainability 2 years ago,
Mm,
and as I started reading more about environmentalism and how you bring it into business, this term kept cropping up, and so I looked into it, and now I feel like, okay, this is the way that. And there are professionals. It's a professional organisation. There's a chartered
yeah,
institute for environmental management, so IEMA, which I'm an associate of. So that's the kind of affiliate is you pay your membership, and associate is the first level of professional membership.
yeah,
So I took that exam at the end of last year, and it's just mind blowing, because you think, oh, we can do this. There are ways to do this. There are people who know how to do this. And so we're very much, I think Davies is on the start of our journey,
yeah,
and I think the whole vet sector is on the start of the journey, and it's a really exciting opportunity now. So I'm
yeah.
really excited to be at the start of it.
No, and I think it's again, I think it's brilliant, all the stuff you've done, and we share a common passion for One Health, because this is essentially a One Health topic. Mine's on more disease prevention with antibiotics and rabies control.
Yeah.
Sustainability is a part of that. There's other areas as well that One Health can touch on. And like you say, it's a fantastic area. So
One Health is key, and this is
mm,
something which is hard, because One Health is not always quantifiable, and it doesn't always seem business critical.
yeah,
So, for instance, and I imagine you've had this with antibiotic resistance,
mm,
is that everyone said, well, it's important for people, but day to day, I've got an infection, I just need to treat it.
yeah,
And you sort of dissociate the long-term impacts of AMR with the shorter-term clinical impacts, because you don't see the resistance pattern the day after you prescribe the antibiotics.
yeah,
So, how have you? I don't know how you've managed this AMR education. That's a challenge in itself, and that's really where, I mean, AMR is one part of One Health.
yeah,
And we maybe talk about some of the other aspects of it, and why
yeah,
those have such big environmental impact. But just as a clue, if you look at the carbon footprint of the NHS in 2018, I think it was, they said 60% of the carbon footprint of the NHS comes from procurement, and
mm,
about 2/3 of that is procurement of pharmaceuticals. So if
yeah,
you prescribe less, your carbon impact is reduced by a
yeah.
huge amount, and wastage of drugs in the NHS is a huge carbon footprint issue. So I mean, that's my angle on it, but your angle on it from the resistance is even more important.
Yeah, and I suppose if you look at, I mean, I always reflect on a couple of things. I mean, I got very heavily into it at the beginning of, oh God, it's about 10 years ago now. And, I can, I can remember doing all this work, doing all this research, understanding the science, understanding what I needed to do, and then being in ICU with cases where I'm thinking, well, I know the science. I just need to prescribe this one antibiotic. But last year I prescribed this one and this one. you know, and changing habits is hard, and it's similar with it's trying to get everybody engaged with. I mean, when I used to talk and lecture, I used to use recycling as an example, actually, which people,
Really?
yeah. So, it's like, if you've got all your rubbish and you've got a choice to put your bottles in the recycling bank or your plastics in the recycling, you might think, oh, it doesn't matter, but actually, if we collectively all join together and have a similar ethos, we have a bigger impact. And it's hitting those easier, those more common, situations first, and then gradually, as momentum builds and people are more accepting of it, of being an issue, you look at just touching on my area with antibiotics, 10 years ago when I first started talking about it, compared to now, people are like, well, yeah, this is an issue, and it's the same with the environmental stuff. You think about, I can remember, like, in the 80s, the thought of recycling glass bottles, and then in 90s it was just part of, normal.
Part of what you did.
Yeah.
So one area that you've come up with, which I'm really interested to expand, is this idea of non-prescription prescriptions. What do you call it?
Non-prescription pads and things like that.
Non-prescription pads. So, for instance, if you have this idea that for an antibiotic, you give somebody a non-prescription and say, "I am not prescribing this for you for this reason, and here's the explanation for it." I like that idea for to expand into all sorts of preventative medical healthcare. And this is where I'm going to ping it back to the medics, because I don't know enough about it. But diabetes, there is an element of diabetes which is dietary management, obesity management. Can we expand on that? There's a huge element of chronic pain management that is about physio, that's about acupuncture, that's about weight management, which is about how you manage activity levels, how you do supportive care like laser therapy. There's all sorts of education tools that we can use that are basically non-prescription elements, which will benefit the patient far more, and will probably benefit the owners far more, will cost far less. And again, you're hitting this people, planet, profit element of sustainability, of saying, if you non-prescribe, you will do a better job. And can you make that a commercially viable option? And I think you can, because we can engage our wonderful nurses. It's a National Nurses Month, and we don't use that experience and that expertise in communication and education as much as we could. So we need to enable that and support that as in all of these preventative programs. That's my vision.
So it's essentially, with the non-prescribing pads that was produced in the redraft of the Protect BSAVA SAMSOC project, and essentially that was trying to provide vets with resources that they could use to back them up. So you're in a consultation, acute diarrhea. It's a tick box system. You kind of say your dog has tick diarrhea. I am not prescribing antibiotics at the moment because I don't think there's a need. Tick. These are the things you need to monitor, and give us a call if these get worse. And by having an organisation on it, it kind of backs them up.
And so we can expand that. We can expand that, can't we?
Absolutely, into lots of areas. And I suppose what we should do, because we're meant to be talking about Davies. It's a great discussion. We could probably chat for 3 hours. So we probably should focus a little bit on our journey, because that's what people are going to be interested in. Let's talk about how it all started. How did it evolve?
So it started, I don't remember if you remember at the time when Sarah Gibson, one of our anaesthetists, went to a perioperative care conference. And one of the big figures in medical environmentalism is a guy called Professor Hugh Montgomery. And he gave a talk, and this talk was actually recorded, and it's now, if you Google Hugh Montgomery Royal College of Anaesthetists Aries talk, it's part of the Aries series. And they've distilled it into a 20-minute lecture, and this is a really, really powerful 20-minute lecture on what's going to happen if we carry on as we are in terms of the planet. And it wasn't a lecture about how bad it's going to be for the planet, it was a lecture about how bad it's going to be for us. And it reframed this problem as not a people versus planet problem. This is not a choice of, if you want to carry on with your lifestyle, that tree will have to die. It's a question of, if you carry on with your lifestyle, those people are going to die. And it really is that kind of element of reframing the problem in terms of a medical healthcare emergency, which is now pretty widely recognised in the medical field. So Sarah came back from that conference and went to our directors and said, we need a green group and we need to do it now. And to their credit, the directors went, all right then. What do you want to do? So I think it was Clive at the time was director, and sort of he and the directors authorized it, and so we formed a green group, and so a few of us got together, and we had some meetings. We decided to do a few things, and we decided to. I remember one of our administrators at the time decided to change the stickers that we had. Do you remember they used to be on ages? So the stickers that we had that for all the animals used to give the age of the animal.
Yes.
And so she changed it to date of birth of the animal, so that we could reuse the packs of stickers on the subsequent visits.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
do you remember the Ferrari?
Oh. We're all very change receptive, aren't we, as a profession?
So the furore was because we couldn't possibly calculate the ages, and I admit I was in the two camps, because I was thinking, oh well, I want this for an environmental reason, but I'm actually finding this quite challenging. So what we didn't do was communicate that very well. What we also didn't do was realize where our big hits were, because none of us knew how to carbon footprint. None of us knew what the big hits were likely to be. So it took us probably about 9, 10, 11 months to calculate our carbon footprint, to get that information together. And we were still struggling. We didn't really have it all in one. We couldn't work out how to convert electricity and gas and inhalational agents into one equivalent carbon dioxide equivalent value, which is what you should do. Yeah. So I started scouting around thinking, well, the medics must have the answer. They must know what to do. And I found the Sustainable Development Unit of the NHS, and I found Investors in the Environment. And Investors in the Environment are an organisation set up, a charitable organisation, to support small to medium-sized enterprises on their sustainability journey from the get-go. And I rang them, and I happened to get the lady who is now the national lead for IE, and she said, yeah, we can help you. It'll cost you this much. So I went back to the board and said, we can do this. And I'm reasonably sure that it's going to save us money. I'm reasonably sure it's going to be good for these reasons. And the director said, well, how sure are you? And I said, look, I don't know. You're going to lose 600 quid if it doesn't work. Yeah. And again, to the director's credit, they went, all right, off you go. And that's how it started for us. And once we got that element of structure, of knowledge, of impact, of support, of integrating it into people's job roles, so that it wasn't me doing it. I remember, people saying at the time, "This is not your job. Why are you doing this? That you should be giving this." And I'm like, who should I be giving it to? There is nobody. There is no veterinary authority on this. And unfortunately, but yeah, you can see where that one's going. Yeah. Whoops, is all I can say.
But I suppose you highlight that, with all great initiatives, there's always there's a small core of people with passion and drive for the subject. Yeah. And if you're going to get something like this going in your practice, you need to, you need a small core of people who are all on side in the message, and they can deliver that message in lots of different ways.
But we were lucky that we had top down and bottom up as well. We had people on the ground who really cared about it, that aren't necessarily in Green Group, but people who are passionate and turn out to be secret recyclers at home. And we had the board, and we were able to meet in the middle with, okay, well, these are the challenges, okay, these are the facilities to enable you to do it.
Yeah.
Yourself included.
and then there's also, because like you say, there's a delivery of the message, and there's some people who are already very passionate on board with this message, and they're very easy to get on board. There's an element of groupthink. You get a critical number of people, and then all of a sudden the message goes. But there's also repackaging the benefits as well. And you highlighted that, for some people who may not be as focused on the sustainability, your measures have demonstrated a financial benefit as well in some areas.
Massive financial benefit. We saved the cost of membership on IE many times over every year. And so some people have emailed me and said, well, my boss wants to be environmental but doesn't want to join IE, so can we do it without them? And it's, well, of course you can, but it's finding that structure and that incentivization, and that it's almost the guilt think as well. So some people, guilt is the motivator. They know that if we might lose our accreditation over it, and somebody's going to be annoyed about that, then they'll do it. So you have to find the thing that triggers every person to do it, and then work with them. So it is about change management, and it is about reframing. And there is some webinar vets done by Libby Karen Thompson, who's a business consultant, who talks about how to affect change management. And that is something that I knew nothing about. I thought that if you just went and told people the science and the data, that they would change, because that's what I did. But I am apparently very data minded.
I remember, because again, I've learned about, I'm sure you've seen the change curve and the process everybody goes through, and then you've even got different groups of personality types that engage in different ways. So some people, like say, focus on the data. Some people will focus in different ways of delivering the message. And I suppose the thing I always found depressing is that we're all so boxable, if that makes sense. You know, oh, that's me over there.
Predictable, yeah.
I'm ordinary and in that box.
Yes, I like data and certainty, so COVID's been just great for me.
Yeah,
Really enjoying it.
yeah, I can imagine. But you know, I think certainly one of the things I was surprised by was the opportunity, and I don't want sustainability to just be focusing on the financial aspect of it, but for people who are concerned about, you know, that, because when you're managing a business, you've got a lot of different issues you've got to juggle, you know, and one of the things, particularly in the current climate, people are going to be worried about, you know, business coming back after the COVID situation. But sustainability has that element of, you know, you get I mean, there's a good message from it. There's the feeling from it, knowing that you're doing, you know, proactive things for the future. There's the scientific aspect, but there's also opportunities to improve the profitability of your business, which
absolutely. And you know, sometimes you make changes that are not going to save an awful lot of money, and sometimes you make changes that are going to save a lot of money, and sometimes you do things which are going to cost you money. And but the point is, overall, as a whole package, it's going to benefit you in so many ways. And I mean, Becky will know this from the marketing point of view, but marketing is not about a hard sell. It's about telling people what you can provide.
Yeah.
And then it's their choice as to whether they take it with you.
Absolutely.
So a lot of what we've been doing is just saying, look, this is what we're doing. This is the way that we're doing it, and it's your choice whether you want to engage with us as a business. And so in terms of being able to offer a positive message, not only in terms of clients, but in terms of staff. So recruitment and retention, we know that particularly millennial Gen Z are very keen to work in a place that is going to benefit their work-life balance and their work-life messaging. So that's a really important part of it. But yeah, in terms of money, and you have to reframe it as well, because somebody said, oh well, you've saved £1,000, that's nothing. And it's like, well, it's the profit on however many TPLOs. So you will have to process, and I haven't actually worked this out, but you know, you're going to have to process quite a number of TPLOs with all that manpower or person power. Oh goodness, that was dreadful.
Don't worry.
I'll get in trouble with my boyfriend for that.
It's all the fixed costs, isn't it? So
yeah, it's all the fixed costs. Everything is going to cost you to get the same level of profitability. So you can get that by putting some turn off stickers around your practice and encouraging people to turn the air conditioning and the lights off when they leave the room.
Yeah.
So that's tangibly worth something, but also the other co-benefits that you have to recognize are the risk management. You know, how much is it going to cost you if you don't manage your environmental legislation? That's a big factor now. Especially with the amount of reporting and you know, hazardous waste management and waste hierarchy laws that there are. If you don't manage those risks, that could cost you a pretty penny. And so a lot of it is about risk management. A lot about future proofing, because if you are anticipating that things are going to be in short resource, then you can plan for it and you can work around it. So the same thing with like face masks at the moment. You know, we're moving towards reusable face masks because we can ensure access to them.
Yeah. So I suppose if we come back to, because it'd be great for people to hear, you know, you've talked about generating the data on carbon footprint of the practice and using those online resources from your membership, which sounds like that made that experience a lot less painful. It's probably the best way of putting it. But once you got all that data, because I mean, I know from my experience with antimicrobials, I mean, that there's so many things that you can focus on. You know, and everybody uses, there's a bit of a phrase, low hanging fruit, the easy wins. You know, so what were the things that you identified that were things that, you know, what could get people on board, make an impact? You know, what were the initial priorities?
Our initial priority was waste, because it was the visible thing, and I think Blue Planet had not long come out, and it was the thing that everybody was passionate about.
Yeah.
If you look in terms of carbon footprinting, waste disposal is around about 0.1% of your footprint.
Wow. Okay.
You know, and that's true of the NHS as well.
Yeah.
Whereas procurement, as I already said, procuring equipment is you know, a 40% hit of your carbon footprint.
Yeah.
So you have to think about waste in terms of the waste hierarchy, which is reducing waste first, then recycling, reusing, then alternative disposal, and so on. So waste was an important thing, but more to get people into the view of we are taking this seriously, and it's so visible. And healthcare waste is a very tricky area. And we've actually got an article coming out in this June's In Practice magazine on waste management, which I wrote with Anne Woolridge and Patsy, which is, waste. Anne Woolridge is a clinical medical waste expert, and Patricia obviously understands the medical aspects of how you categorize a patient as infectious or not. And I don't know very much about either, so I just got to write the article. So waste management was a priority. When we looked at the carbon footprint, it's very clear that energy is going to be a priority for most people, and that's electricity, heating, water heating, that kind of thing. That's huge. Travel, commuting is always going to be a big part, but the difficulty with commuting is that it's very hard to measure. So we are aware it's there, but we don't measure it. It's what's called a scope 3 emission. So it's down the list of what you're obliged to report, but we're aware of it. We've got an estimate of what it is, and we're sort of tackling it in the background. The problem with electricity and commuting is it's the least sexy part of the whole process. And I have no passion for it. I hate cars. I drive one. That's all I want to know about it. It's like the television. You want to switch it on. I want to get in the car and drive in an environmentally friendly way. And, so it's difficult. So the last thing that's a big hitter is anesthetic gases.
Which was
obviously
phenomenal.
Being an anaesthetist, that's the bit I care about. So what we've done for that, we've produced low flow resources. Those are all on our website. We've produced capnography resources because you need to be able to use a capnograph in order to do it effectively. And we've really shouted loud and hard about the negative impacts of drugs like nitrous oxide. So we don't use nitrous oxide at Davies anymore. Other than I've just discovered recently the cryosurgery canisters which the ophthalmologists use are nitrous oxide. But they're very, very, very small quantities. So I think I can live with that, because I don't think there's another alternative to do cryosurgery. So we're not using nitrous oxide in the big way that we would have been 10 years ago for anesthesia. So and then isoflurane is the next one. So we've very visibly tackled anesthetic gases and waste, and then behind the scenes we've been doing energy and transport. Those are the big hitters.
So I mean, I guess what I would say is I can remember, because for those who are listening, I sit next to Ellie in the office. She sits next to the medicine team, and I can remember her revealing the impact of anesthesia gases on global warming, and I was just like, wow, that's staggering. And then Patricia is one of the medicine clinicians who was helping with the waste articles. So Patricia's been opening my eyes to the massive area on waste. I mean, I think it was something that we took seriously, but then it was like, wow, there's a whole nother level of it. It's a phenomenal thing. So certainly I'd advise anybody who's listening to look out for the In Practice article, because that is something from not just from a sustainability point of view, but also from our responsibilities as clinicians and practice standards that we need to manage. So that will be a fantastic resource. So out of all those things, what do you think went best, and what were the ones where you went, nailed that?
Waste, I would say we're getting there eventually. And I'm a whole lot happier with where we are now than where we were 2 years ago. But that's been like pulling teeth. Because the legislation is so complicated. But hopefully this article has distilled it down into what I understand about it, that we've got compliance. We had to go to the top of the Environment Agency in DEFRA to get clear decisions on some of the things. So I think that's the level of muddying of the waters that there has been.
I mean, I was just seeing you and Patricia talk about it was just mind-blowing. I just really, in my wildest dreams, and actually I didn't realize that you had to, obviously the guidance wasn't even that crystal clear, the fact that you had to go higher and higher within organizations to get definitions. So waste was a challenge.
But it's really worth doing, and I've really got into it, and now I get questions about waste management. I got somebody emailed me and said, what do you do with dog hair? And I'm just like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I'm getting this email, and I'm excited to answer it. Anyway, so that's been a challenge, but that's been well worth doing, and hopefully we're well much further along the way, and helping other people. We've got also our waste posters that we
Yeah,
put up that are really visible around the practice, so they were a real success because that was a collaborative effort between us, Sharp Smart, who provide the reusable bins, our clinical teams. That was a real practice effort to get those together. Our marketing teams, and Anne Woolridge as our waste expert. So that was really satisfying to finally pull that all together. Electricity, we put some air source heat pumps in.
oh, okay,
When I
yeah,
say we, I had nothing to do with it. That was all our financial director. He just did it with our
yeah,
facilities teams.
yeah,
Put these air source heat pumps in to replace some oil electricity oil combo
yeah,
heaters,
yeah,
and they're paying for themselves within about 18 months.
wow.
And they're
And then
just so pleasing every time I walk past them. I'm happy. So
fantastic.
those are my two. Those are the two things that stand out for me. But I think there is. I know. There's one more thing. The response, the engagement, and the response from both the team at Davies and from the wider vet community has been phenomenal. And
Yeah,
I've had contact from the Canadian Veterinary Medical Association wanting to write an article in it. I was meant to go to a conference in Germany to talk about it later on this year. BSAVA, SPIVs, VMG. SPIVs have been incredibly supportive of the journey. Investors in the environment are so excited about it, engaging with another industry,
yeah,
because this is a whole sector that nobody had really looked into before.
yeah,
And lastly, Vet Sustain. So the regenerative agriculture themes that are coming out of Vet Sustain are so exciting. And
yeah,
there's a webinar, vet seminar that was released on Wednesday on that.
yeah.
Sorry, I'm gabbling. I'm
No,
excited.
no, no, no. It reflects your passion, which is awesome. Yeah,
So yeah, there's so many exciting areas. But for me personally, I think the waste and the engagement and the electricity savings are just to see our carbon footprint coming down now when
yeah,
it was going up. That's
it's
fab.
yeah, yeah, fantastic. And I suppose what we should just finish in then is as we said at the start, we want to share as a practice our journey and the experiences and certainly in a process like this, there's no point people repeating mistakes that we've made or work that we've done. So can you just outline some of the resources that we've made available and where to find them?
Yes, so we have tried from the start to put everything onto our sustainability web pages, which are on the main Davies site. And that started with one post and it's expanded as we've put more press releases out and more information out and more resources. So we have a referring vet newsletter that we send out every quarter.
Yeah,
And that is now written. Fortunately, I was the figurehead of this process for a long time, but now we have a new green group manager who is
yeah,
Rachel Evans. So she's done a master's in sustainability and she's taken on the green group leading
yeah,
role, while I've moved on to the Linnaeus leading role.
yeah,
So we've got those resources all on our website. Whenever we do anything new like this in practice article, we put it into the referring vet newsletter and onto the website. So that's
yeah,
all information's all there. Vet Sustain has been really great, and that's a collaborative group of just vets that are interested in sustainability.
yeah,
So they've got some really exciting themes and ideas coming out through their work, including toolkits that they're trying to put together for general practice and small animal practices and large animal practices.
mm,
The SDU, watching what that medical healthcare field is doing is always interesting, but
yeah,
in some areas it's not applicable to what we're doing.
mm,
So I think those are the main places that I would look to. The last places, Webinar Vet have been releasing a lot of environmentally minded lectures,
yeah.
some of which are free to access. So
Okay.
so they're a really interesting source of the broader picture.
Yeah, brilliant. Cool. Well, I mean, we probably should tie it up there. I mean, I'd love to chat. I mean, we could probably chat for the next 6 hours because it's One Health. We love it. Just to reiterate, there are resources available on the Davies website. If you're wanting to get information ahead, or be notified when more resources come available, always email our marketing team. They're happy to put you on an email list to contact you. I just want to thank Ellie again, for a really interesting chat. It's been really, enjoyable, but also for all her fantastic work in pushing this forward for the practice, for the group, but also for the profession. Your energy has really helped engage the profession in this area, which is fantastic. So we hope everybody at home or out on a run who's downloaded this is found that useful. We'll certainly, if it's okay with you, Ellie, try and do some more similar podcasts, maybe go into some of those areas in a little bit more detail, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, sure. And we're doing the sustainability webinar on the 27th or 29th. It's all the marketing team can sign people onto that.
Yeah.
So we're doing a kind of top tips and a discussion webinar through the Davies CPD series that's coming out.
Yeah, and if anybody's listening wants more information on a specific area, please email us, and we'd be very happy. That will give us a great idea of other podcast discussions that me and Ellie can have on one aspect of integrating, maybe a little bit more on waste, maybe a little bit more on anesthetic gases, things like that, so that we can hopefully try and disseminate our experiences as much as possible. So thank you once again, Ellie, and everybody at home, stay safe.